Well, Julie and I are excited as a part of our Leadership Gwinnett Disruption Learning Day that we have the chance today to interview Ed Bastian. You know, Ed is the CEO of Delta. Ed, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Scott. Good to be with you.
You know, Ed, it's hard to think of an industry that's been hit harder by the disruptions of 2020 than the airline industry. Could you take us back to when you first started hearing about the COVID-19 outbreak in China? How did your team initially start preparing for the crisis, and how long did it take for you all to fully realize the seismic shift that was about to happen in your industry?
Well, that whole period of time, unfortunately, it was like the time was stamped stop still. You know, the days feel like months, and the learnings were fast. We first started to pay close attention to it in early to mid-January. The reports out of China were disturbing. I can remember, towards the end of January, being down in Santiago, Chile, with a number of members of my team. We had just completed a large investment in the LATAM Airlines Group, the largest group in all of South America. And we were with the family down there and the owners of the company and some of the management team. And just a kind of a couple-day retreat, just getting away, getting to know each other better. And we were watching this, and I can recall on the spot, deciding that we just needed to stop flying to China. This was in maybe third week of January, third to fourth week in that range. And some of the team members thought I was being it was a little premature. We didn't know a lot, but I said to them, would you want to be on those flights serving customers, from our own people's perspective? And they said, well, probably not. I said, well, nor should our people be on those planes. So we stopped flying. We're the first airline to stop flying to China in late January. It was a big political thing that the president eventually stopped flying to China, but we actually were well ahead of that. And from there, that's huge. China is a massive market for us, and our two largest trading partners in the world, U.S. and China. Would never stop service between our two countries before. And but then as the reports a couple of weeks later about New York and Milan and everything was unfolding, it was clear we had a real crisis on our hands. And I think people were still moving and were still traveling, and the reports were somewhat inconclusive. But then the next really vivid memory I have is the second week of March. I get a call from Secretary Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary for the country, and he said, "I'm calling on behalf of the president. He wanted to call, but we're scrambling for time. But we've decided we're shutting down borders to the transatlantic markets. All flights between the U.S. and Europe are going to be stopped as of the end of the week." And it was at that point that we knew this is going to be far bigger than anything we had experienced, and everything started going pretty aggressively from there.
Wow. So when you think about the decisions that you guys had to make, whether that was right at the beginning or maybe subsequently throughout the year, let's start with what's one decision during the past year that was an easy decision for you to make strategically? And then I want to come back to maybe what was one of the hardest ones.
Oh, there were so many things we did. We didn't have a playbook. We never had anticipated. It's funny, people always talk about having contingency plans ready and desktop scenarios that if this goes wrong or that goes wrong. No one had this scenario where the world was going to be stopped by a virus you can't even see. I'd say probably the easiest thing that I decided, and probably one of the most important things I decided early on, was we needed to get our people out of harm's way. Our people are out in the front lines serving, flying, and while we needed to keep the airways open for essential travel and essential services and medical providers and food service distribution and lots of reasons why people were traveling through the pandemic, our people were in danger, but we need to make certain that anyone that had a risk to the virus, a higher level of comorbidities or age. We put thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and we took them and said, please stay home. We're going to pay you. Just stay home. I don't want any bad outcomes. We have lost people, as you know, unfortunately 400,000 people in this country have lost their lives. In the early weeks, we lost probably about 10 people to the virus. And I was just beside myself that I did not want to lose any more people and do the best we could. So we took it upon ourselves to, and then we did many, many more things after that to take care of people. But the first decision to really take was to get our people out of harm's way and keep them home with pay. And we made it through, the entire pandemic without having to furlough a single employee here at Delta. You know, I don't think there's another airline in the world that could say that. It was a kind of audacious goal I had set at the start of the pandemic. I didn't really think we could do it, but we figured it out, and we've been able to do that. I'd say the hardest decision, one of the hard decisions, and we still continue to make it, is we keep our planes, our capacity blocked on our planes. We're still blocking the middle seats. It's the right thing to do. It's an important thing to do. Our customers appreciate it, but it's really expensive when you're operating the airline. All the other airlines are selling all their seats, and we deliberately decided not to sell 30% of our seats. And it's the right thing to do for the long term. It's right. People feel comfortable. It's interesting. We're actually on Delta generating more revenue than our competition with on average 20% fewer seats available for sale. Which is really hard to do. My dear friend Dan Cathy at Chick-fil-A, I was with him this past weekend. I said, we've become the Chick-fil-A of the airline industry. We're closed 20% of the time, and we still generate more revenue than the other airlines are generating, because people appreciate what we're doing, the care we're taking, the space we're giving, the hospitality, the warmth of the service of the team. But that's an expensive decision. We just extended it through the end of April, so it'll be a full year that we've kept that middle seat block, and we'll continue to evaluate keeping it blocked.
That's great. Julie, I want to ask you to jump in with a follow-up question or two.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ed, I think that you actually set us up nicely for that. I know that you talked about, your team, and, we know how close the Delta team is to your heart and how much you have done to ensure, the 80,000, Delta team members are well taken care of. And, we can't imagine how hard it must have been, to make strategic decisions that were going to scale back or, downsize your team. And it sounds like, that didn't have to be the case. So you've always been open and honest as a leader. So, how did you choose to handle the honest conversations about the changes necessary to survive with your worldwide Delta team?
Well, early on, starting about the second week of March, I started to hold video town halls with all 70,000 strong. They wouldn't all be necessarily on the same time, but they would watch it if they weren't able to join us live. And I was at least once a week, and I still do to this day, by the way. It's try to do it every week. And I'm telling our team what we're seeing, what we're thinking, what we're hearing. We've never been through this before. We've never put our airline to bed, which essentially is what we've done and what we're doing now in terms of trying to keep everybody safe and rebuild it and put it back up in the sky. It's never been done before at any kind of scale. And what it's meant, Julian, is there's a lot of, particularly in the early weeks, but even today, there's a lot of answers I don't have. There's a lot of questions that I'm not sure of, and people get a chance to ask me, talk to me, watch me, process, think. It's a very vulnerable period of time, but communications is at a premium at all times, but particularly in a crisis. And the one thing that I've learned, unfortunately, I've been through a few crises in this business before, that it's even more important in a crisis to communicate, openly and transparently and vulnerably than ever. And when you don't have the answers, actually, that's when you build real trust. When you tell people you don't know, but these are how you're thinking about it, and this is how you're, listening to it, and these are the ideas that I need to hear and think about and talk about and discuss. And what we've done is, over time, we've taken the entire company week by week through the process. It's like going through a story. and they're watching us change and navigate differences. And some weeks, travel is picking up, and other weeks the virus is creating real issues for us, and talking about all the challenges and opportunities and the need for volunteerism. We've had over 40,000 of our people volunteer to take months and months and months of time off without pay through the entire year, which is how we've gotten through this thing. We've had untold numbers of, we again, no airline's been able to do that, because I think our people have all feel connected to the story and want to do everything they can to protect this franchise and protect each other's jobs.
Ed, I want to kind of draft off of that question as well. So in times of crisis, we know that as leaders, there's times when we just have to say, we're going to do our best, make our best guess, follow me. But, even though there's not a playbook, there's still a team, right, that you're having to pull together. How did you and your team operate with no playbook? Was there certain ways you guys learned to optimize when to bring the team together, when you as a leader have to just go, we're making this decision and moving forward? How did you guys work together with some of the big decisions you had to make?
Well, with the direct reports, the team I have is about 10 people on my immediate staff that run the different parts of the company. Almost immediately, again, second week in March, we started getting together 9 o'clock every single morning, and weekends every day. And we still do it to this time. We don't get together every weekend mornings, but 5 days a week, at a minimum. And we talk what's going on, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're thinking, and what we're processing and making and taking those decisions together. I really believe this is the airline business is a big team sport. I mean, it takes a lot of people. It's a very integrated business, a lot of moving parts to it, a lot of complexity. And we needed to continue to draw on the wisdom and the counsel and the insight of everybody and make those decisions. And I'm known to make decisions quickly, which I think is really important in a crisis, that you make decisions quickly, you keep making decisions, because you're not going to make all the right decisions all the time. But if you get good at making the decisions quick enough, you can correct them quick enough too, and you can kind of keep moving forward. And that's what we've done. And I think we've made we've been very, very good at trying to anticipate what we need to be doing. And as a result, the airline, I think by far has fared the best in the industry through the crisis, if you look at any objective measure.
That's great. Well, Ed, not only did we have a COVID crisis last year, but we also had a huge outpouring of protest and solidarity around the continued racial equality and equity issues here in the United States. You've been very intentional at Delta to support this movement of more equity and equality. And I've honestly, just as a leader, I've heard you do some interviews where you've actually been asked personally, and you've been very honest about areas that you feel like, as the CEO of Delta, that you have to provide greater opportunities for advancement of diversity and leadership within the company. Can you share a little bit more about what Delta does as a company to help address these important issues? And then also what you as a leader are doing to address it personally, and why you think it's so important for you as the point leader to step out on these issues?
Well, Scott, the pandemic has created a time of quiet. It was in the still of the moment, unfortunately, when George Floyd was killed, that caused us all to watch and to pay attention, and not turn away, and to focus and ask, how could this be? And the more we looked at it and thought about it, the more we realized it wasn't a one-off. This has been happening, and it was symbolic that there's the inequities that exist within society have been more exposed than ever. It's not just the issues around police reform and the challenges of that specific situation, but it's the inequities around the disease. The people that could afford to stay home, bury themselves in their basements and were served by people that couldn't afford not to work, to go out and serve them and take care of them. You look at how this virus has impacted the demographics, very, very differently in this country. There's a reason for it. And so I think as a leader, you're responsible, to your community. You're responsible primarily to your people and your customers. At Delta, we have, today we've got 75,000 employees. We've got, 200 million customers. We serve communities all over the world. I feel personally accountable for what's our role in making it better. This is not something that you push to a government to fix. We know, we've seen how divisive, our political process is these days. This is not something that's a community endeavor. Those are all important. This requires real leadership, and this requires people who can make a difference to help close the intergenerational wealth gap that exists in our society. The fact that a Black family today is no better off relative to white families in our society than they were almost 50 years ago. That it's a 10x differential, and it's just unbelievable. And so when we talk about diversity and inclusion, many of us have talked for years about that. We draw a big umbrella. Includes a lot of different people. Includes race, includes gender, includes ethnicity, sexual orientation. There's a lot of different ways, and we've always thought of ourselves at Delta as being a diverse and inclusive company. But when you disaggregate the data and you look underneath to find the groups of within your own company who haven't had the same level of opportunity, for us as clearly as our Black community, we've got about 20% of our employees are Black, yet only 7% of our top leadership is. And that's not equitable. Obviously, our people have not been, some people have not been provided the same opportunities as others. And it's my obligation to understand and see what I can do to be better. We talk a lot at Delta about being family. We're serious about that. What we do is important work, and we bond together. It's a very strong culture here at the company. And as the leader of the family, I look at each one of my employees, my team members, as part of my family, and it's my personal responsibility to help lift them up. So that's what we've been doing. And when you start opening yourself up, actually you start learning more, and you start reflecting on what you have to do. And I've used this last year to really learn a lot about the reasons why we have the inequities that we do, whether it's in wealth or medical care, whatever, it's across the board. And unfortunately, you also realize that your company has contributed to those inequities, whether it's through it's not intentional. We talk about it being systemic racism or blind biases that you're not aware of. But the reality is they exist, and we got to find ways to reach in and pull people up and give them better opportunity, which causes other issues. I'll be honest with you. Then you have other groups saying, well, what about us? So does that mean we're going to be disadvantaged versus others? And the reality is we got to raise the bar for everybody. So you're right. I've been very vocal on the national stage on this. Locally here in Atlanta, we sit here in Atlanta, which is the birthplace of the civil rights movement in our country. We have an obligation to do better, and that's what we're going to do.
That's great. And I want to just thank you for leading the way in that regard. Ed, I think you said something really important there, that sometimes it's easy to think about these issues as organizational issues, or organizational learning, but really it's also about a personal learning journey. And I think that's what I've heard so much from you, is that sure, you're the CEO of Delta, you care about your people, you care about that, but you're also learning and you're understanding these issues so you can speak from a personal place, not just from a issue place.
No, that's right, Scott. I have a group of our employees. We have various resource groups, business resource groups that address and gather on different issues of common interest. And we have a Black employee resource group that's been around for some time. It's called BOLD. It's a great name for them. And I've met with members of that team now probably every few weeks for the last 7 or 8 months. They represent their frontline employees, pilots, flight attendants, and gate agents, and reservation agents. And I have learned more from those folks in those meetings over the last year than probably any meetings I've been in the last year. Because it's really hard as a white man to put yourself in the shoes of the Black community. It's hard for me to really appreciate and understand it, particularly when you're the CEO. People only want to tell you good stuff, but to really see what the challenges are at an individual level, your heart really opens for them, and your passion to change and make change happen. This is a powerful position. We're the CEO of the largest company in the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia. I can make change happen. I can make certain that we're doing our part to close that divide here at Delta, and I will do everything in my power to make that happen.
That's great. I know we only have a couple minutes left here, Ed, so we just have two questions left for you. Julian, go ahead and dive in with the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ed, like you were mentioning, you are the CEO of Delta Airlines, and you get to sit in a kind of global leadership position, and you get to see things, on as a leader on a scale that most of us don't get to see. So with that, what is that that one thing as a leader that you are most concerned about in these days, and then also what is one thing as a leader that you're most encouraged by in these days as well?
Julian, the thing I'm most worried about and concerned about is, how the pandemic has impacted so many people in so many ways. Obviously the health of our nation has been under attack, and the physical wellness, the mental wellness, the isolation, the distance, the uncertainty, the anxiety runs really deep in our society, in our community, in our companies. We need to pay attention to what we're doing to take care to keep our people, mentally as well as physically and emotionally and financially as well, because it's created a lot of winners and losers. And unfortunately, the winners are the people that you'd expect to be winners. These are the folks that benefit from people staying at home. The losers are the people that have to go out and work for a living. And that wealth divide that I talk about, unfortunately, has gapped out even more this past year. So when you think about the needs for wellness, it's a big focus of mine within the company, and what we're doing to take care of people going forward, psychologically, financially, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's a big deal. It's a real big deal. Again, I don't have a lot of the answers. I've just hired a chief health officer for the first time. The company's been around 95 years. We've never had a chief health officer. I hired one of the top doctors from the Mayo Clinic. He's joining and reporting directly to me as our chief health officer starting next week to help think through this and get through this. Not just in healing, from the pandemic, but also making sure we're more resilient and we're not as exposed as we were. Shame on us. We never saw this coming. I don't think anybody really did. We've got to be ready for what's next. And I don't know what's next. I pray it's not going to be anywhere close to what we've been. We've learned a lot, but there's a resiliency we all have to gather individually as well as business leaders to ensure we're better equipped for the future. And the other part of your question?
Yeah,
that was what I'm most concerned about.
Yeah. And then on a more positive note, what are you most encouraged about by these days?
Oh, I'm encouraged by the amazing response by our medical community to developing a vaccine in unbelievable amount of time to cure this evil disease that's killing so many people. When you think about it, the development time, the distribution, the testing, we've got a lot of issues, in the rollout of the vaccines and what we're doing, and but we've never tried to inoculate our entire country before, right? So did we really expect it was going to go smoothly? It was record-setting time that the medical community, Pfizer and Moderna and J&J and so many others have contributed to to getting a vaccine found that's effective and it's proven and it's effective and it's been approved. Now we've got to apply that same level of ingenuity to getting it in people's arms as aggressively as we can. And again, this is where the corporate community can play a big role. Leaders and businesses can lean in. We're doing that here at Delta. We've opened up over on Concourse C a vaccination center. Since we've got Concourse C partially shut down because of the pandemic, and we're vaccinating all of our people 65 and above, working closely with the Georgia Department of Health, and the governor's office. And then we're going to, once we get done with our own people who are 65, we're going to take other airline employees who are 65 and airport workers in the community who are 65. And we're also doing it over at our flight museum later this week, setting that up. And we hope to be setting up a big drive-through, or we are not hoping to, we will be later this month. And the governor is provided us a lot of support to be a massive vaccine distributor, and working with CVS to do that in partnership. We're paying for it all. People that can come up and get a vaccine for free. We're not charging anybody anything. Delta's funding all of that. But it's our role to take care and to cure. And I believe, from talking to all the medical experts and people I know, is that by the 4th of July this summer, this nation, we're going to be in a new form of celebration for independence. I mean, it's going to give Independence Day a whole new meaning. It's going to be independence from the virus. We're not going to be all through it yet, but we're going to be a lot more normal than we think by that point. And people will finally be released and be able to start to regain and recapture the year of their life they lost. So I'm very optimistic that over the next 6 months, we're going to be in a meaningfully better spot. We're going to be different. We're going to continue, the virus is going to continue to be out there that we're going to have to be smart about. People are still going to be wearing masks in social gatherings at times, but we're going to actually be able to appreciate what we had at a higher level and be able to really understand what wellness and relationship and community is all about.
That's great. And we have one more question for you in closing today. So Ed, you're talking to a group of very influential community leaders today through this program. Based on what you've learned about leading in and through disruption this past year, is there just one important piece of advice you'd leave us with that you give us about leading in the midst of major disruption that you think would be helpful as we close?
Sure, Scott. Well, at the start of the pandemic, last March, I was with my board chairman, Frank Blake, who's the former CEO and chairman of the Home Depot company, and just a dear, dear friend and great person, one of the smartest people I know. And we sat down and we didn't know a lot. We didn't know where this was going, but we knew this was going to be really difficult. And he reminded me that character is not built in crisis. A lot of people think character builds crisis. It doesn't. Crisis reveals character, and it reveals who you are, reveals your values, it reveals what you stand for. And as you lead through crisis, you need to understand that. You need to make certain that you're leading from your set of values that you're going to be evaluated on. And we're going to look back a few years from now and look at the decisions we took, and we're going to be defined in many ways by what we're doing currently in the moment in addressing the biggest health crisis that we'll see in our lifetime. And character reveals crisis. Crisis reveals character, and that's those are words every single day I wake up thinking about every single day. When I reflect on the decisions and the challenges and the opportunities, how is the character of Delta, the culture, the values, who we stand for, going to be reflected in what we're deciding to do?
That's great. Well, that seems like a perfect place to end today, Ed. So we just want to say thank you again. We know you have a very busy schedule, a lot going on. Thanks for taking a little time to join us and let us learn from you. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks a lot, Ed.